So I just wanted to talk about real quick 2 tracks, bangers, heavily played on both, both albums. Let's go and talk about Tupac's "Holler If You Hear Me."
Oh,
Okay.
Holler if you hear me. Somebody tell a group of
Yo, I felt like this album
right?
stayed. I felt like this album stayed on the Juice soundtrack.
Ah,
that Juice vibe.
The whole album was a Juice vibe.
Yeah.
So I hear
Makes
phenomenal
sense.
people as far as saying it, like like Pac and the whole West Coast thing like that, and Snoop and everything like that. But like this had such a Juice vibe.
Yeah.
It did.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Even the producers now, I can't remember his name. Who produced Mama's Gonna Knock You Out?
that was Marley Marl.
Wow. Yeah.
Wasn't there another?
They might have. I mean, there's a lot of stories about Marley Marl having other people make the
Yeah.
beat.
One of the influencers
Yeah.
is on a few of the tracks. I remember that because this is like, again, the same thing. I missed it at the time because I was very New York with my shit. So it's like I had to go back and study it as a teenager. When I went back, like, okay, he's dead now. Now we can talk about Tupac. No, bro. Now all this.
It's a fact. I can't hold it against you. It's a fact.
Right.
I feel like even that type of sound, like it became so synonymous, and then the use of the sirens and everything gave big Public Enemy vibes, like all
Right.
Huge Public Enemy. L.I. all
Same
day,
way.
baby.
A lot of bombs.
L.I. all day. L.I.
Yeah.
all day.
Yeah.
It's, yeah. I would definitely exactly with the exact reference of like the Public Enemy Bomb Squad kind of stuff. I remember hearing it today, going like, I was surprised they weren't a part of it. I mean, but then like I said, you had sort of still that East Coast influence still peering through.
Can I
Nice
say
stretch did that
something
beat.
that might be a little bit controversial?
This is strictly barbershop talk. Strictly
So
barbershop.
I feel like those sirens and hearing that in certain songs, and it wasn't just the Bomb Squad that did it. It wasn't just in that sound. It was very, I mean, so many different in influence, and I affectionately call it because I feel like the vibe that they're trying to set off.
Can I get an air horn for Pete, please?
Take a shot for that.
I'm thinking of just the right edit to put right on top of it. Respectfully, whether it's gonna be it's like the corporate tax man or a picture of Jimmy Iovine or something.
She's like, I'm not trying to cancel
maybe
anybody, cancel
a
us.
siren that comes in when she says that.
A picture of Leor Cohen, just something. I'm just trying. It's in my brain. It's in my brain.
But let's further define man in the sense so that I don't lose my job in case any of this gets
Not at all. Please go ahead.
meaning the system, right? Let's kill the system. Kill the system. So the sirens and what that sets off in you, and give yourself flavor eyes as I'm watching myself do it. Like it gives that feeling and that anger. And when you listen to the lyrics, Pac is giving conscious. He's giving conscious, and he hates Dan Quayle. That's what he's giving.
You literally, it's so funny you say that. I re-listened again today. Things you missed from not hearing it in such a long time. He mentions the vice president. At the time, I wouldn't have been surprised if he got a knock on the door by not Social Security.
He mentioned the president too. He mentioned the president too. Not just the vice president.
That too. You're right. I mean, it just caught me so off guard again listening today, going like, he mentioned Dan Quayle.
You mentioned a lot of cats.
Yeah, he sure did.
My name. I feel like that was Tupac's MO, but
The second song I'm about to play is not the first song on the album, but again, kind of sets the tone for what the album that Snoop kind of delivered as his first debut project after really, being half the debut of The Chronic, if we're being for real. Again, I wanted to play something that sort of represents that sound, that style. Let's talk about the SHIZNIT.
Oh, there you go.
This shit make you want to ride.
Yeah, word. It's so unfair. This East Beach Around is so unfair, bro. This is so unfair. I might put the bandana on just because it's so unfair.
I mean, you probably should. I'm with you.
It's so one-sided.
Listen,
so one-sided.
I don't know how you feel. Explode. Ike, you're talking the talk. Let's talk about it. Why do you feel it's so one-sided, sir?
This Doggy Style album was a different sound. You know what I mean? Like, think about the funk and everything that EPMD was doing at that time. And then Dre and this album just took that to a whole nother level. And like, there's nothing wrong with this album. Let me just say this now before I forget. This is one of probably 2, 3 albums I can think of right now that is completely flawless from front to back. That's why I say this is so unsided. So I'm going with the SHIZNIT and everything else.
First vote of the night, put down by Ike, infinite. Not holding back. Don't hold back, Ike. Don't hold back. And the bass line is extremely catchy. Again, like I said, I wanted to pick 2 songs that I felt sort of represented both individual styles that they delivered with the rest of the album, and both on the production side. So just to reiterate, we're getting about the Holler If You Hear Me, back to what P said, very militant, very conscious, but still very street. And at that time, sort of veering a little bit away from that West Coast kind of sound and not really appearing too much on this album from what I kind of, I mean, maybe a little bit, but again, very sort of East Coast.
Another thing, I didn't realize that was the first single. In my mind, remembered I Get Around being the first, or noted single.
That was actually the 3rd single on that record.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah,
that was the 1st single.
Because keep your head up was the second single.
Keep your head up with the second one.
Ironically, the 4th single, Papa's Song. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah. Which is 4 different sides of Pac on this album. You listen, you think about that song.
4, that's interesting. I looked at it as 2, but 4. Can you break down the 4? Because I only viewed it as 2, as like the conscious and then the gangster. Like, what's the other 2?
Right, Holler If You Hear Me. I Get Around. He's a pimp player. Come on, that's all the way around, right? And what was the other song? The Papa song. That's a different emotion, man. I could speak to that song. You know what I'm saying? That's a different kind of emotion. That's a lost young man. You know what I mean? Looking for a father. Hurt somebody. So there's 4 different aspects of Pac that you got on this album.
I think he made a career out of it. I think he did that on every record.
Yeah, we talking about the singles though. Just the singles. Think about being presented, because I'm huge on singles. Like, people be like, "Oh, listen to this song." I'm like, "Well, that shit is trash." Well, listen to the other song, and I'm like, "Well, if you gave me a pastry and the shit was trash, why do I want to go chase the pie?" You know what I'm saying? Like, the pastry's trash.
I'm gonna speak on behalf. I feel like
the trash. What are you gonna do?
No, I'm after the trash. No, but one thing we know for sure, especially me, you, Dave, in that office, hearing artists getting put out with their first single out, you're like, I would never. Would have never listened to her if I would have based it on the singles, and you get a whole different person on the album. So I feel like that part you do have to scrape the surface a little bit, but to bring it to that same idea, but to Snoop, you made a really good point, Jules, about the introduction that we got to Snoop, right? We got an introduction to that Dre style of production, the use of samples that was different, very, very different than anything that Dre did with NWA. So it was like the continuation of that, super deep cut soul samples that now are standards, right? Like songs that were not necessarily as popular, or songs that were very region specific being used as samples. The singing chick, God bless her soul, I know she died recently, Jewel, rest in peace to Jewel,
yeah. She can sing.
And it's every song, but she brought that almost soul roots gospel, it was just a very different style. To your point, it was just very, very, while we were familiar with it, it took it to a different kind of place.
To a different kind of level, yeah, absolutely.
It felt very blaxploitation, but it gave more than that. So it's like, what were my parents listening to? Okay, I'm familiar with that. Now put something new on it. Very, very different styles, even though they were friends from and representing the same place, very, very different. And I think that's why the East related to that in a different kind of way, because of our familiarity with the use of samples. Kane, Eric B, Rakim, EPMD, the way that the soul samples and that influence, and you gotta get me to move with the music first, Chubb Rock, Biz, the list goes on of East Coast rappers where you felt that first and then you listened to what they were saying on top of it. Snoop did that, but in a very West Coast way.
Right.
Yeah, that soundscape was like the soundtrack to LA if you had never been. It was different.
Yeah, for sure.
If it was first introduction to West Coast music, you didn't grow up listening to Cube or NWA or Gorillas in the Mist. This was the thing that painted it for you. It was a picture painting. That's why it's so good. Put it on and walk away from it. And that's why I had to pick this record, because it's damn near anthems all the way through it. It's an album of anthem. You can't escape a hit record on that song. And you know how we feel about that. Like, I think we all thought Rick Ross was going to be a one-hit wonder. We were dead wrong.
Or at least like a good 2 albums, but he definitely.
The way that Snoop record hit, it was like, all right, I got to dive into it because one, it's not just the sample selection. Some of those songs you couldn't get cleared back in the day.
Right.
There's a whole story we can talk about if you want to talk about that. And we're going to at a certain round, though. And I'm glad you brought it up, though, Dave.
Yeah. There were songs,
Hold on to that though, because we definitely gonna talk about certain songs not making the cut and then making the cut.
Yep.
So boom, we're talking about 2 songs again that represent both sides of the spectrum. Both these guys that are taken very seriously in hip hop at this point, especially being West Coast guys, having to sort of hold that hill down, like, you know, don't fuck with me sort of seriously. Ironically, Snoop brought a bit of like sort of a lightheartedness. I think that funny comedic angle that they brought to the videos and stuff like that sort of definitely helped. From Gin and Juice just kind of bugging out, having a house party, to Doggy Dogg World, just again, like you said, it's a black exploitation pimp shit. And
standing on the devil's roof, man.
You know, so, and then you have Pac again, super militant, trying to drop knowledge, trying to drop science. Who do you got? We're talking about both songs. I think Dave were you picking Snoop when you were saying that?
I'm picking Snoop because I got my first interception and smoked my first blunt. On the back of the football team basketball.
It's okay. Listen, if that's the nostalgic hill that you want to stand on, I respect
That's what's up. That's what's up, dude. That's what's up, dude.
I am okay with that. Just the vibe I'm getting from the room. Maybe I could be wrong. I'm an energy kind of guy. I'm getting a lot of the SHIZNIT kind of vibe right now. That's all right. Does anybody want to raise their hand strictly for my guys? Holla if you hear me.
I want to, but I'm not going to.
I feel similarly.
I want to, but I'm not going to.
I feel
Here's the DJ Hobo one.
Growing up in a different, you know, I'm from Virginia, so I grew up in a different space than I think everybody in here. You know, everybody's from New York, except for Dave. I don't remember where you're from.
He said
but it was for me like. And I'm not a Tupac fan, to be clear, at all.
At all? Whoa.
I hear you.
Wait, not at all. That's harsh. That's
That is a little harsh.
That's a little harsh.
I was like, there's a couple of Joy Machiavelli album alone.
Yeah, but
I hear you.
Kind of like what P said. I didn't really check for Pac until after he died. I like Holler If You Hear Me, and it does give me that East Coast juice. That time frame, that vibe, and I liked that vibe. I liked that sound. I did, and I really liked that he was like.
Holler If You Hear Me got the same beat as the Jungle Brothers. Didn't Jungle Brothers use that?
They use the same sample.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they do use the same sample.
Yeah, same sample.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
again, back to what P was saying too,
like
bringing that East Coast sound.
I felt like I like it's a dope song. It's one of the songs that I do like from Pac.
I'm gonna keep the room moving because I got a couple of interesting points that we're sort of delving on right now that have to do with round number 2. So just to quickly wrap this up, does anybody feel Holla If You Hear Me for real? Not this little flirt that DJ Hobo's doing. I reject your flirt. I reject your flirt.
It's a flirt because I don't necessarily.
No, don't flirt, P. You either gonna
the matchup. You got to think about the matchup.
You either gonna give me the phone number or you not. Don't say you're gonna don't give me Instagram.
Yeah.
Either your phone number or you're not. Do you holler if you hear me or no?
You gonna take your drink back? No,
I'm gonna stop paying on the lease. I'm gonna stop paying on the lease.
Then I gotta give it to Snoop. But it's a strong feeling. It's a strong feeling because those two being matched up feels a little different. Like,
yeah.
Again, one of the most popular songs. It's a very, very popular song, though. Again, like I said, it was an introduction to the album, literally, and then it was also an introduction to his world at that point. And I think he kind of represented that to his dying day. I mean, to a certain degree, like he stayed conscious, he stayed militant to a certain degree, even though he got sloppy at some point. But it was always still like the message. It was a message, the hip hop, and I have something to say. That's how I always took Pac.
There's always, and there's 2 sides to it. 2 sides to him. I hear you on the 4 sides, but I've seen the 2 sides as like just that struggle, so to speak.
I think it's safe to say, the whole room is, again, just waddling together in the pond and just following each other respectfully. Everybody in the room has voted one side. The house is about to tip because it's just so one-sided. We're going on a plane. But I got to give it up as well. I think the SHIZNIT is a great record. Again, a great bass line, a great just everything about it. And The room goes the Shiznit. So this round, Holla If You Hear Me versus the Shiznit, we're talking about Snoop Dogg taking up the reign on this one, giving Doggy Style round number one, putting the official point on the board.